Good evening, San Bernardino. Thank you guys so much for joining me tonight. Gonna make sure that we get set up and everybody knows that we are live. And that you can hear me. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna give it a couple 30 seconds and we got some stuff to go over. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for joining. Thank you for jumping in. Okay. So while everybody is preparing, I want to open this because this has been a lot. I know I've been pretty quiet on Facebook for a bit. What the city has done and put out has been very hard to deal with and to kind of wrap my head around. I've had a really negative reaction to a lot of this through interactions with community members who have called me out publicly for being a liar, for causing a lawsuit. I've had my work question me about what was going on. I've had my students question me, after all these years of teaching about ethics, what was going on. And there have been prospects that I've kind of had to pull away from for summer projects because this has been out and people are trying to, get what's going on. So it's, when something of this magnitude in an investigation, especially in a field of which I am deeply rooted, comes out, it means there's a lot of attention, even if we don't see it. People around us are always watching what's happening in the city. People in our county and throughout the state of California constantly have their eyes on San Bernardino, and so this has been really rough. I've lost sleep. I've been putting this together because at the end of the day, what I want you guys to know from what you see in this video is that the city has maliciously lied to our community. They have created false narratives. They have changed dates. They have attributed quotes that never existed, changed quotes, took words out, all to make myself, Ricky Van Johnson, Councilwoman Calvin, and a strong group of the African American community look like we've done something that we have not done. And so why they did this, I want to assume because they believe and know that the common regular community member is not going to do this much in-depth research, because this takes a lot. This has taken me a week to do and go back and pull their own records to show the truth. And so knowing that the average person, is just going to read something and take it, I want to show you. So tonight there's going to be a little back and forth. I'm going to back up everything that I have with a video. I want you to be able to see and hear for yourself. You're not just going to take my word for it. And we're gonna jump in. So hi Mike, hi Paula, Ron, Sarah, Tim, thank you guys. All right, here we go. So as you guys know, about a week ago, now coming up 2 weeks, the city put out this first part called they put out a press release, a summary of findings, and then a factual analysis of the findings. They released 18 out of 136 pages of a report. And a lot of it had like witness A, witness B. So through other media outlets and through, following the claims and everything that's been going on, I've pulled the names in so it's easier for you to understand and follow, because that's really important. The way that the city put the information out, a lot of people were like, I'm not sure. All I know is that your guys' name is in this and they're telling you that they're doing this. So number one, As reiterated throughout the report, Cox and Associates was contracted by the city of San Bernardino in March of 2023 to facilitate the city manager recruitment. Witness B, who is Frank Rojas, was assigned as the recruiter for the city manager position and conducted individual meetings with all council members, excluding Kim Calvin, to gather their specific criteria and preferences for the next city manager. And I want you to know, I'm going paragraph by paragraph, of this report that they put out publicly. This is their report. What I've highlighted is what you guys can see, so I added that in for you. May, June, and July were dedicated to sorting through applications and reaching out to a diverse city manager contacts with the aim of attracting the most qualified contacts for the position. After going through the initial pool of 67 candidates, recruiter Frank Rojas presented a list of the top 10 candidates. Now, for the purpose of this, we're going to go with just the 3 that are involved because that's who we could figure out. So witness D is Harry Black, the city manager of Stockton. Witness A is Steve Kerrigan, the former city manager of Salinas. And witness BB is Charles Montoya, the current city manager of the city of San Bernardino. In addition to the goal of sourcing a diverse pool of applicants, Frank Rojas explained that he crafted his presentation on the top 10 candidates based on a combination of their credentials, alignments with San Bernardino Council's preference, and insights gained from pre-interviews. The comprehensive approach aimed to present candidates who not only met necessary qualifications, but also resonated with specific expectations and priorities outlined by the San Bernardino City Council. The list of candidates appeared to be fair and balanced. So they said 20% of the applicants were white, 50% were Black, 20% were Hispanic, and 10% were Asian. No Pacific Islanders or Indigenous. Hi, Kathy, Jessica, Marianne, thank you. Thank you. Item number 2, the evaluation of the interview process. After the initial Zoom interview, this was August 8th, the City Council employed a scoring matrix to evaluate the candidates. The first round of ratings was conducted without prior knowledge among the council members about the scoring process, reducing the potential for manipulation. Following the Zoom interviews, Steve Kerrigan, Charles Montoya, and Harry Black emerged as finalists. However, some council members expressed concerns that Harry Black seemed coached before his second interview, as he addressed previously mentioned shortcomings, which were only discussed in closed session meeting after the initial Zoom interview on August 8th. Now, this cannot be confirmed. Through other people that have covered this, nobody has been able to confirm that Harry Black, anybody had questioned Harry Black's interview. During the second round of matrix ratings, suspicions arose among council members that some were using the scoring system to create a distinct separation between Harry Black, Steve Kerrigan. Notably, council members who ranked Harry Black their top choice tended to rank Kerrigan the lowest, while those who favored Steve Kerrigan as their second choice placed Harry Black as their second. This pattern led to a 1-point difference between Steve Kerrigan, Black, Harry Black in the final scoring. Now, I want to point something out to you because up until just the other day, Harry Black's name had never been mentioned publicly by any one of us. And when it came out and people were talking, I was very shocked. Well, where did you get this information? And I want you to understand something, that the city of San Bernardino was in such a hurry, and the council members, the corrupt left side of this city council, were in such a hurry to put this out against us that they didn't redact Black's name. When people were first reading it, they thought, oh my God, how racist. They're calling the candidate Black because it's been identified. There was an African-American. I can't believe they're calling. But no, and through research, people were able to identify Harry Black because of the city of San Bernardino. The city is their own leak. And so that's how this swirled around within minutes of the council receiving this and them trying to get this out, that this is what the city of San Bernardino does. They break the autonomy of the candidates. So I wanted you guys to see that. So at the August 18th special meeting, I want you guys to remember that even though Mr. Black and Mr. Kerrigan and Charles Montoya were all there in person, Councilwoman Calvin made a motion to reopen the recruitment and expand the pool of candidates. She was not the she was not fully impressed with everybody that was, on that list, including Mr. Black, and said that she wanted to continue to receive more applications and resumes. She was voted down 5-2 by the council. The city investigation says, number 3, the examination of the contract negotiation phase, including subsequent information leaks. The significant discord within the council became pronounced when Harry Black and Steve Kerrigan were chosen as the 2 final candidates. On August 18th, despite Harry Black being favored 5-3, so this wasn't just the Black council people, San Bernardino. Councilman Reynoso sent sabotage when a list of demands presented by Frank Rojas included a surprisingly high financial figure, raised concerns even amongst his supporters. Now you're going to hear directly from Councilman Reynoso on this topic from an interview that he gave. That there was never, his thing was the number, wanting to negotiate, but never any time does he ever say sabotage. And what you're going to see is this very expletive language, that this opinion and over sense of exaggeration of feelings in this report that's this independent investigation report. So during this conversation on the 18th, the Assistant City Attorney Thomas Rice rightly halted the discussion as it had not been agendized. It was then decided to obtain the demands or denial points or deal points from Steve Kerrigan, so the council could conduct a side-by-side review of both candidates' requests. Now, if you remember, we know this because Steve Kerrigan in his claim said that Thomas emailed him asking for a list of demands. Now, 3 days later, during this meeting, the council decided to extend an offer to both candidates, with Steve Kerrigan receiving a lower salary. Now, we want to talk about salaries because people have read this and were like, I'm trying to figure out how a city offers the same job to 2 people at the same time. And you're going to hear again from Councilman Reynoso later on that this is actually being contradicted, that this didn't happen, that the city was, in the majority, were in favor of Black. Harry Black the whole time. On August 22nd, before the meeting concluded, Harry Black withdrew, citing a leak of information regarding his candidacy. Though this could not be substantiated, this withdrawal upset Councilmen Reynoso, Calvin, and Alexander. Councilmember Calvin conveyed to the group that she had spoken with Harry Black and attributed his withdrawal to a PD to PD contact, hinting at a possible leak. She, along with Councilmember Alexander, advocated for an investigation, though this particular leak could not be verified. So I want you guys to listen to this. So what they're saying is that during the meeting of August 22nd, before it concluded, Harry Black calls in while they're in the middle of this meeting and withdraws, saying that information has been leaked and someone knows I'm a candidate. And then at the same time, during this meeting where Harry Black has called in, Councilwoman Calvin has had a conversation with him within seconds. Does that even make sense to you, that she conveys that she spoke to Harry Black at the same exact moment that he is calling in and telling people that there's been a leak? No, it doesn't. And in fact, you're going to hear contradicting testimony directly to this fact that this didn't happen in that meeting at all. And multiple times, Harry Black says, there was a leak of information and I am withdrawing as a candidate. Immediately withdraws. Councilwoman Calvin says, there's a leak. We need to do something about it. Her and Councilman Alexander advocate for an investigation on August 22nd. In this meeting, they're saying, please investigate this. Now, remember, the city's saying this couldn't be verified. The city didn't start any investigation until December of 2023. This happened in August. They did nothing about it. They didn't look into it. They didn't stop everything and hire an investigator. They didn't do that till months later. This is where their timeline starts to fall apart. Remember from the video I posted before, on August 18th, Kerrigan says that after the second interview, Rojas called to tell Kerrigan that he was in a dead heat between another candidate and Kerrigan. So Frank Rojas is coming out of closed session and telling this man that you're in a dead heat with the other candidate, although that's not accurate. In fact, Black has received the majority of votes, and they are supposedly in this moment supposed to be looking at the terms of the agreement. And according to the city, instead they offer dual offers. This completely contradicts what the city has said in their investigation. Then, after the meeting of August 22nd, when Black has pulled out in the midst of this, remember, Thomas Rice reaches out to Kerrigan and says, and offers him the job. He says, okay, now you're it. And they agreed to terms, and he says they're going to vote you in on August 28th. So this, according to the city, they say following Harry Black's withdrawal from consideration in the middle of this meeting on August 22nd, the council still extends a generous contract offer to him, hoping to change his decision. However, Harry Black, upon reviewing the offer, reportedly became even more upset, expressing dissatisfaction that not all of his requests were accommodated. He insisted that he would not accept the job in San Bernardino. So let's make this, let's go with this. So after this candidate has been sabotaged by having someone, and the multiple reports is that it's been someone from the police department coming into him and talking to him, he withdraws. And then supposedly someone goes and says, hey, we'll give you this job, but we're still not going to give you everything that you asked for. But they don't tell you who that person is, right? There's no witness. There's no Thomas Rice or Frank Rojas reached out. And they're saying that he was mad at this offer on August 22nd. Did that even happen? Because they can't tell you who did it or why they did it. In contrast, on that apparently the same day, Steve Kerrigan viewed his offer as generous, leading the council to vote 5-3 in his favor, with witness Steve Kerrigan as their top alternative, because Harry Black was the leading candidate with the majority of support right before he was sabotaged. The dissenting votes were cast by Reynoso, Calvin, and Alexander. Well, why would that be? One, Steve Kerrigan's about to get an $80,000 boost if we're going off of what Charles Montoya was hired at. All three council members, Reynoso and Calvin and Alexander, can all confirm and say that Harry Black has been sabotaged. They're willing to stand by this, and they've advocated for an investigation that the city is totally turning a blind eye to. Yeah, you think they're just going to jump on board and be like, yeah, this is great. This is exactly what we want. But nobody would know that Councilman Reynoso and Alexander and Councilwoman Calvin would have had dissented, except that Frank Rojas went out of closed session and told Steve Kerrigan, who was in support of moving forward with him after the sabotage and who wasn't, in a violation of closed session. Then they conclude, once Harry Black was officially out of contention, Steve Kerrigan began moving forward in the process. Closed session information began leaking. Although All of this is happening in the same meeting. Councilmember Calvin's proteges began receiving and disseminating private information on social media platforms and news outlets. So Harry Black pulls out right in the middle of the meeting. Councilwoman Calvin can magically have a conversation with him in the middle of this meeting. They're saying that leaks have happened, but they're treating this as two completely separate, isolated incidents of a leak that they do nothing about, that when the Black candidate is sabotaged and the Black council people ask for an investigation, they're turning a blind eye. But this is about race because Kerrigan was white. And all of this happened in the exact hour in closed session. And this is, but when it happened, when Steve Kerrigan complains about it, it's brand new information. It's never happened before. Do you see San Bernardino? Do you see how this is starting to fall even further apart? Because this doesn't align with Steve Kerrigan's complaint at all. Councilman Reynoso, at this meeting, began advocating for a new recruitment process, believing that Frank Rojas had undermined Harry Black. He also believed that the police department subverted Harry Black's candidacy after receiving information through Councilman Sanchez or Figueroa. They never investigated. They never batted an eye, and they never did anything. And you know why? Because there's no vote for it. Councilman Reynoso also makes a claim that Black actually withdrew August 19th, the day after August 18th, where they had interviewed in person, where the majority of the council were in favor of Black. The next day he withdrew from sabotage because of sabotage. That is Councilman Reynoso's claim, and you'll hear that later. They say at the conclusion of the investigation, the preponderance of credible evidence indicates that Councilmember Calvin seemingly funneled closed session information to her close associates to initiate a social media campaign against A. So during the middle of this meeting, while Black is being sabotaged, while people are having conversations and Kerrigan is automatically the alternative choice, somehow Councilwoman Calvin has had all this time in front of every single member to coordinate an effort against Kerrigan. And this is an isolated, like no one who went out and talked about Black talked about Steve Kerrigan at all, because that makes sense. That makes sense. Calvin's involvement in another investigation provided a motive for her to temporarily step back from public scrutiny and use surrogates to conduct a smear campaign against Steve Kerrigan and eventually Charles Montoya. You know, this investigation and stepping back from public scrutiny over a report that didn't even exist in August, that didn't come out until December 7th, and nobody in the community had any knowledge of. That's the thing that she had to temporarily step away from. See, it's very hard to keep your story straight when you're writing about the past in the future, when you're trying to tie things together that didn't even exist in the same moment because you didn't investigate a single thing in August. And a smear campaign, the community speaking directly to Steve Kerrigan's professional record, was a smear campaign. And the city announced Charles Montoya as the city manager after on October 13th, 2 days after they held a special meeting on October 11th. Number 4 of this investigation into perceived organized efforts to impede candidates during the open session. The first appearance of an organized effort to impede the selection of Steve Kerrigan occurred shortly after the SB Sentinel published its unfavorable article. So if you guys remember, it was actually the Sentinel that came out. And they just wrote another story that came out a couple days ago. And it says, media outlets by August 20th were positioned to begin inquiries with the likely candidates for the post. No later than August 21st, for example, the Sentinel was attempting to reach Kerrigan for comment regarding his application in San Bernardino. Simultaneously, the mayor and members of the council, as well as McNeely and senior city staff members, were tight-lipped with regard to any likely candidates for city manager or even the prospect that a choice was in the offering. The paper was already on this. So they're telling you, remember, that it is the city's claim. It is the city's claim in their investigation that on August 22nd, right after Black pulls out because he's been sabotaged, Councilwoman Calvin starts her campaign against Kerrigan. And the paper, the Sentinel, is admitting and telling you that they were already reaching out to the city of Salinas 2 days before they ever had that meeting. And verified with the city of Salinas that they were already getting calls. So that happens on August 25th. Now on August 26th, the investigation report says that a San Bernardino resident witness V alias Michael Davis sent a demeaning email to the city of Salinas and revealed Steve Kerrigan as a candidate in San Bernardino. They conveniently left out that on the 26th, Kerrigan sent an email to all of his directors telling them that he was a finalist for the San Bernardino position. But it's really amazing and sad, right? That a resident would reach out and send a demeaning email tearing this man down. I mean, I can't even imagine what someone would say in such a demeaning way. Well, so I asked for the email and I got it. This demeaning email reads, "To whom this may concern, Salinas' city manager, Steve Kerrigan, has been identified publicly as the next potential city manager for the city of San Bernardino. In reviewing his prior professional history and issues resulting in his termination from the city of Merced, I am inquiring to see if there are any ethical or professional issues we, the residents, and the city of San Bernardino should be made aware of. Sincerely, M. Davis." Oh, that demeaning email? What part of that was demeaning towards him? Or as I said, and I thought, did you guys not think we were going to get a copy of this? Did you think that you were going to just say you got a demeaning email and we were going to sit back and take your word for it? This, again, San Bernardino, this, I understand that people won't know, right? You won't know, you'll read and you'll just assume. But I want to show you the truth. I wanted you to see this. Now, if you remember, the paper came out up there on August 30th and said he had sent an email on the 26th and that he had sent emails on the 27th. And I got a copy of the email he sent on the 27th where he says, "Finalist for San Bernardino city manager position. Oh, I'm a finalist for the city manager position with the city of San Bernardino. When a decision is made, I will share it with each of you, Steve." Assuming because he thought he was going to get in on the 28th, right? Thomas Rice had told him, "You're going to get the job on the 28th. On August 27th, the same day as the email, Michael Davis posted the following item on social media, a Facebook group which is moderated by 3 people associated with Kim Calvin, most notable witness Ortiz. And this is where they remove the shield redaction of my name, because it's very important for Teddy Sanchez, Sandra Barr, Juan Figueroa, and Fred Charette to make sure that I am named now publicly in this. The Facebook posting implored residents to show up at the August 28th closed session meeting to demand action after the most qualified candidate had been sabotaged. On August 28th, the closed session meeting took place. It was marked by the attendance of a significant number of upset African-American residents expressing dissatisfaction with the selection process. So I want to make it very clear to you. There were actually 5 Hispanic residents and 7 African-American residents who spoke. And I was one of the Hispanics. A 2-person difference is is the difference between significant and not even mentionable. Because it doesn't fit the narrative if you tell people that there were other people in the room. Besides the most outspoken of our African-American community, however you want to look at it, the fact that we even want to distinguish their color, these are people who speak often at every meeting. But they left out that there were Hispanics. So what I did, because there's always questions, and you guys can go back to this because it'll take a while, is I laid Harry Black's resume against Steve Kerrigan's as reported in the Sentinel. So please take your time if you want to look at what the difference between when they talk about the most qualified outstanding candidate versus Steve Kerrigan's resume. The fired city manager. The city goes on in the investigation to say during the meeting, Councilmember Calvin, so now we're at August 28th. Okay, so we went from all of this happening on August 22nd. Now we come to August 28th. And during the meeting, Councilmember Calvin surprised colleagues by reading from a prepared statement, visibly angry and calling for an immediate halt to the recruitment process. However, the council voted 5-3 to proceed with Steve Kerrigan. So I went back to this meeting, and you guys are going to hear this. What they left out was that Mayor Tran opened the meeting reading a prepared statement that didn't surprise anybody because it was full of lies that she read directly to the community. So I want you to hear, and then you're going to hear Councilwoman Calvin's, what she says in that same meeting. So.
I'd like to start off the meeting with a message. The city of San Bernardino hired a professional recruiter to handle the city manager recruitment process. The process has been handled professionally, and everyone involved was reminded of personnel confidentiality laws. The city council has met in closed session several times to discuss and interview candidates, and we are confident that we will make an offer to highly qualified city manager. In the meantime, we ask that the people respect personnel privacy laws, and we hope to make an announcement soon.
No, I'd like to make a motion to immediately close the recruitment for city manager and our contract with Kaufman Associates and re-agendize the topic to our next regularly scheduled meeting of September 6th. We cannot hire anyone from a failed process that lacks confidentiality and ethics, which is called a candidate to withdraw. We need a recruitment that is open, transparent, and includes community input.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear that visibly angry Councilwoman Calvin? Did you hear the completely different statements that the mayor of our city came out and directly lied to the people? And what surprised everybody was that there was the truth. That's what they were surprised about. And Councilman Reynoso seconded her. And this time, Councilman Alexander, because he had already supported in a prior investigation on August 22nd in closed session that they didn't come out and report, they didn't say anything. He supported it, and it went 5-3. I'm sorry, 4-3. But it's different when you hear it for yourself, right? It's different than this visibly angry Black woman they try to always push in this narrative. And you hear the mayor lie because we know the truth. So remember that in this meeting, in open session of San Bernardino, this is Steve Kerrigan's claim. A large group of African-American residents attended. They spoke out against Kerrigan's potential appointment as San Bernardino city manager. 7 of the 10 speakers that spoke against Kerrigan's candidacy are African-American. 1 or more members of the city orchestrated this effort to squash Kerrigan's candidacy because Kerrigan was not the correct favored race. Black. Doesn't add up, huh? Black was already gone. It's interesting that they get to use Black and throw it around because maybe they didn't think the community was ever going to learn Harry Black's name. Maybe that's the fun in all of this for them, is pretending that race was that issue and not qualification. And don't forget there's Susie Soren, who called this man Steve Kerrigan and told him that this lawsuit is our fault. And she got a $90,000 raise and they created a job for her to do that. But we'll get back to that on part 2. Then we come from August 28th. Steve Kerrigan doesn't get the contract approved out that night. They move to the meeting of September 6th. They say that negative social media coverage persisted prior to the city council meeting on September 6th, 2023, where another predominantly African-American group of residents continued to voice concerns about Steve Kerrigan's potential hiring. Steve Kerrigan faced disparagement without the opportunity to defend his character, as no one else on the dais was allowed to speak on the topic. Former 6th Ward councilman who's been identified in other news outlets, a very close personal friend of Calvin, Ricky Van Johnson, was notably vocal during the meeting and made public comments about Steve Kerrigan. Unbeknownst to Ricky Van Johnson, Councilmember Ibarra was closely observing him and watching him submit a large stack of speaker cards. This prompted her to text and ask why he was submitting all of the cards off after the cutoff time. Each of the cards contained the names of people wishing to speak about the city manager candidate. Oh, did it, Sandra? During his interview, Ricky Van Johnson became caught in a fabricated story about the speaker cards and later claimed an African-American activist group filled out the cards for everyone in advance. One of those speaker cards was in the name of Michael Davis, who never appeared at the podium. Well, it doesn't say who Sandra texted, and it doesn't say that any witness was able to corroborate that. That's very interesting. Now, what is also interesting is nobody can remember Sandra being in the chamber or any other meetings because she never greets community and she comes in through the front. And we also know Sandra Ibarra to be a liar who makes things up against the community. And for her to have directly watched Ricky Van Johnson submit speaker cards after the time, well, then she was already on the dais. So what she's saying is that all the way from sitting during a meeting, she witnessed Ricky Van Johnson with a bunch of cards in his hands, the speaker slips, and turned them in. And they claim that Mr. Van Johnson was very vocal against Steve Kerrigan in his public comments. Well, there were no public comments during closed session. So I wanted to see what vocalness against Steve Kerrigan that Mr. Van Johnson said, and I wanted to hear the names of the speaker slips. So we're gonna listen to that right now. We're gonna make sure you guys hear for yourselves this very vocal Ricky Van Johnson.
Speakers.
You hear your name, please make your way up to the podium. Belle Christensen, Leanne Uribe, Stephanie Davidson, Sharice Sterling, Valley Davis, Michael Davis, Ricky Van Johnson,
Valerie Davis, Ward, 5th Ward. I was just a little disappointed that they pulled the item 20, but we understand. And we thank you for at least postponing it, and perhaps we'll have an opportunity to speak on that subject. But I'll just mention what I was going to say in reference to that I am here requesting your yes vote to repeal San Bernardino's discriminatory multi-housing program ordinance, MC 1351. I thank you for your time and interest.
Good evening, Ricky Van Johnson, Ward 6. Over a decade ago, Mr. City Manager, you presented the city council with a plan to avoid bankruptcy. However, the council did not have the political will to take advantage of your advice. It did not matter that you had been in leadership for over 3 decades as a thriving executive, that you turned challenging cities around where eventually they would prosper because of your management and wisdom. None of that mattered. Well, by not listening to your advice, we know how that turned out. Now this evening, you have postponed it to another day. You have presented San Bernardino with a plan to move the city strategically forward. Hopefully, the political will present tonight or that evening will support your advice born over many years of successful experience. I surely would hate to see another Groundhog Day. Thank you.
I just, all that attack, right? That vocalization against Steve Kerrigan. My goodness. It's an interesting thing what video recordings show versus what the city is lying about. And so you hear the first Davis name come up, and then Michael Davis doesn't stand up, and Ricky gives his comment. If you see at the back that a large group of African-American people stand up and cheer as Ricky speaks to not Steve Kerrigan, but a plan proposed by Charles McNeely. Do you see the difference between the lie and the truth? This is why this is so important. In the aftermath, Steve Kerrigan withdrew from the process on September 28th. Now remember, he was at this meeting, at the September 6th meeting, they came out of closed session and said he had the job. Not specifically his name, but he had been offered and again accepted the job. He accepted it from Thomas Rice on August 22nd. He again, with the official vote of the city council on September 6th, accepted the job, and they reported that the contract would become public on the October 4th meeting. He had the job, and he had already been made public. And on August 30th, when the Monterey County Weekly did their report saying that he had emailed staff on August 26th, they got a quote from the mayor that said, hey, we're not going to fault anybody who has ambitions to go elsewhere. So his bosses had already been informed by him, by Michael Davis. And when he withdrew, because he says, but it was too late for Kerrigan to hold on to his position in Salinas. The Salinas Council had already been tipped off by the city, quote unquote, and the Salinas Council terminated Kerrigan's appointment 35 days after he was publicly known as a final candidate, 22 days after accepting the offer, and 6 days before the council's final vote to approve the contract. And the city announced that Charles Montoya was going to be the new city manager. And immediately a watchdog group from Arizona started sending emails to residents of the city of San Bernardino, because they, like we do in our city, wanted people to understand who this man was. I also got Steve Kerrigan's letter that he put out. And I want you to see the subject line, which says, "My important decision." It doesn't say I was sabotaged or due to racism. It says, "My important decision." 22 days after he had accepted our job, no one had said anything about him. He was preparing 6 days into the future to become the city manager of San Bernardino. He said, "All city employees, over the past few weeks, I've had the time to think about what is important to me from a personal and professional standpoint, and I have decided that Salinas is the best place for me. Early this morning, I contacted the recruiter and removed my name for consideration for the position of San Bernardino City Manager. Since I arrived in Salinas, the city council, the city employees, the labor groups, the business community, and the residents have been wonderful to me, and I cannot working anywhere else. In Salinas, we've made a lot of progress on major issues like homelessness, affordable housing, crime, and infrastructure, and I want to be here to continue that momentum. On a personal note, some of you already know this, I have met someone in Salinas that I'm just crazy about, and I can't imagine not seeing her every day. In closing, I want to thank everyone that has reached out to me and expressed their support. It really means a lot to me, and it was a big part of my decision. A big part of his decision was that people were reaching out to him and telling him to stay in Salinas. Thank you, and let's get back to work, Steve. Boy, that's really different than his claim, huh? That doesn't sound anything like his claim. This is just randomly in there. Witness B, Charles Montoya, was eventually hired and began his position on October 30th. There was no overlap between the city manager and witness, and Charles Montoya. Before departing, Charles McNeely sent a confidential email on October 28th to the city council and a witness, I didn't know who that was, calling for an investigation into Councilman Damon Alexander. This email was leaked within a couple days and posted on social media group page. This has absolutely nothing to do with Steve Kerrigan's claim. And two, there was no leak because this email was literally sent out to a bunch of people. So again, them just trying to throw stuff in here for the sake of throwing stuff in. This is really important because this was hard for me. Other items used for information purposes during this investigation. As part of this investigation, social media has continuously been monitored for information about the city manager process. Some of the following notes have been made from the listed broadcasts or recent city council candidate forums. Witness Ortiz. Publication from a podcast from August 27th, 2023. I can't show you anything from a podcast on August 27th. Because this doesn't exist, and I have been accused of deleting it. I have been told of covering it up, been accused of covering this up, and I'm promising you, community, that's not true. I did not host any podcasts on August 27th. The date published by the City Council of the City of San Bernardino through its investigation by JL Group LLC maliciously changed the date of my October 30th podcast to make it look like I was speaking to or had access to privileged closed session information. And they maliciously attributed direct quotes to me as if they were my personal statements. And I'm going to show you the podcast, and I'm going to show you where I got this information. They had to do this. They had to move my statements forward because they needed you to think that I was involved, and I promise I did not delete anything. My podcast was on August 30th. You can see, because as always, I put out my flyer. I'm coming on tonight, and I literally have the time date stamps on my Zooms. So I hope those of you that thought this will see, no, No, this did not happen. I didn't have any information before. Everything that I reported on August 30th was already public. What you're gonna hear is what I said in regards to the number one candidate was sabotaged by a certain council member. Because the city, the council wants it to look like I made this statement in advance that I had knowledge. And so I want you to hear my full comment that I made.
Thank you.
So let's get into what's been going on. So 3 days ago, our Facebook community was kind of shook by a post by a man named Michael Davis. And he posted, has our mayor colluded with selective council members to hire a new city manager? It is being made public that Mayor Helen Tran, along with council members Theodore Sanchez, Sandra Ibarra, Juan Figueroa, and Fred Charette, plotted and violated the Brown Act to hire current Salinas city manager Steve Kerrigan. Steve Kerrigan was fired from the city of Merced for withholding important financial documents and information from the public and elected officials. It goes on, and I know it's cut off, I just screenshotted it, that there was another candidate who was the most qualified candidate. And that person was sabotaged by selected council members and the POA. So here's what I first want to say, because people have asked like why I haven't shared this information like on my page and else. Look, as you guys know, and you've been with me for 4.5 years now, I post what I have records of. I post the information that is factual, that I can produce and put on my page and show you. Okay, so when someone else posts something they'll trust, I've been watching and I'm like, oh my goodness, I need to start doing my own homework. This is why I haven't shared it, because I couldn't confirm a lot of it. Now, I cannot confirm that the Police Officers Association had anything to do with any of the sabotage. I absolutely believe and no, right? So I have been able to confirm there was another candidate, a far better qualified candidate who was pushed out. By whom, I do not know. But there was someone else in consideration. And due to unprofessionalism, unethical behavior, I know he withdrew. Okay. So that's it. When they say the number one candidate was sabotaged by a certain number of council, that was not my statement. That was me reading directly from Michael Davis's, or paraphrasing directly from Michael Davis's post, that, as I tell you guys, came out 3 days before I even did this. And I'm watching your guys' comments, so I want you to know I see Rosanna, Fran, everybody that are on here, and I thank you. I'm gonna be very thorough, and this is gonna be on so you guys can watch this again or share it, but I want to get through part 1 in totality tonight. As I said, I can confirm one that witnessed was the candidate, because this was the same day that the Salinas, that the Monterey Weekly had put out their article about Steve Kerrigan and gotten a quote from the mayor. So that's why I was able on August 30th to say that, along with literally being at the meeting where Councilwoman Calvin made a public statement saying that a candidate withdrew because of a violation of confidentiality and ethics and was sabotaged. This is so important to San Bernardino. The truth is so important because the city has lied and changed dates to make this their case. And why would the city need to falsify the dates and the quotes? Because they had no other way to bring me into this so that they could intentionally attack me publicly or make the public believe that I was involved in getting closed session information from Councilwoman Calvin. Our city government published false information in an investigation report to come after me, and as you guys have just seen, Ricky Van Johnson. This is why I'm the only witness who's been named public. My name is public, and his was so easy to figure out. And I'm going to tell you, every single one of you watching, if they will do this to me, they will do this to you. I am one of the most vocal residents who does stuff like put an entire report together. And some people have expressed fear that they will go after them if they speak up. And this is why, right? If they will try this with me, imagine what they would do to someone who won't come to this level. Yeah, we should be deathly afraid of a government doing this. Absolutely afraid. They go on now. So look, here's the thing, right? They tried to tie Ricky to this September 6th. And you heard his public comment. He said nothing about Steve Kerrigan. He spoke, he didn't come to closed session. They tried to bring me into this before Councilwoman Calvin gave her statement on the 28th. After that, after those two attempts, they have nothing. And this man filed his claim on November 30th. He doesn't name Councilwoman Calvin. He talks about the Black community orchestrated by this city. But he mentions Frank Rojas and Susie Sword as the leaks out of closed session. So now they come all the way to January 29th, 2024, January 29th. And they want to once again attribute excerpts and quotes from myself and Councilwoman Calvin. And I want you to hear it for yourself, because they say that she says, I'm not going to have them attack me for asking questions. It's not going to keep a good girl down. Things that go on behind the scenes are not positive. My colleagues just voted for the city manager with a reputation, which you wouldn't hire him for your small business, and I wouldn't hire him for my business. Those are issues you might question. Nobody wants to hire him. Then I say the scariest question I ask is, what would we do if we didn't have Kim Calvin? What would have been able to transpire and go on behind closed doors? The insinuation is that Calvin tells Treasurer Ortiz what is going on. So I want you to hear this. I want you to hear this clip. It's a couple minutes, but I want you to hear this for yourself, this conversation. And some of you heard it live. This was the Live on Robert Porter show.
What the people also didn't get to see is this bogus witch hunt of a report that came out as well. And people then get to see that the hard work and the fight and being the voice of the people can also be a very painful place. It could be a very scary place. You know, it could be a very threatening place. But so you have to have folks who are up for that type of challenge. And what we see is that good folks, good people who want to change will run from that, because there's like, no way will I be able to survive that or have anyone to try to personally attack me publicly for asking questions about what was in the best interest of the city of San Bernardino. And so, was it painful? Of course it was, but it's not going to keep a good girl down. No, it's not doing that at all. And I'm happy.
It's actually making you stronger, and it's making you like more tolerant to this, and you're gonna be able to take a lot more heat as you get further and further.
They're gonna be geared up. No, but what I do want to say here is that the voters must decide. They cannot continue to take lip service. You cannot continue to allow yourselves to take regurgitated council members or people who have been in seat and you can't see where their accomplishments were, you must begin to align yourselves with with people who are running for office that are speaking the language of which you want to hear. And that has to be on issues of what is in best interest of San Bernardino. No matter whether the tone is correct, no matter whether it is, oh, it doesn't sound positive, because check this out. Things that go on and take place behind the scenes are not positive. And we must look at those things. My colleagues just voted for this city manager with a reputation of which you wouldn't hire for your business, I wouldn't hire for my business, nobody else wants to hire, not with your finances, right? And those are issues that you must question. You must question those issues, because otherwise, if you take a blind eye to those, that is what you're gonna continue to see. You actually didn't tell them that you're not that concerned overall, because that you cannot take a blind issue to somebody that is in control of your money.
I'm gonna tell you the scariest question I ask myself is, what if we didn't have Kim Calvin up there? What would have been able to transpire and go on without her being behind closed doors? But even if you watched her in the last council meeting, bringing up this stuff, because we were talking about the downtown, about trying to talk about a meeting that was held where the previous mayor came back and brought developers and all this stuff, and the mayor was trying to shut it down. Be like, well, point of order, we're not gonna talk about this. It's this, like, the burden that watching Kim carry that she had for the last year of being a voice. It's just, it's amazing. This is not for the faint heart. This is not something you
But
just.
she likes it and she's good at it.
Because
And so.
you have to have, but you don't like it every day. And having someone that gets up the next morning after getting beat down, that's the true heart of what the changes on San Bernardino. Because there was a huge faction of people against what is in the best interest of this community. And they are literally out there fighting it.
Cat. It's different, huh? When they cut an entire conversation to pick and choose what they want and misquote and change things. It's different between what would we do if we didn't have Kim Calvin versus what would we do if we didn't have Kim Calvin up there. But again, you guys, you know, the average person is not going to do this. And you never hear Kim Calvin tell you, no, you don't want to, no one wants to hire him. And the insinuation, I looked at the public comments that were on this. Nobody insinuated that Kim was giving me behind the scene information. That is what they put out so that the public would carry the same insinuation. And whose insinuation was that? Is that the investigators? Is that Teddy, Juan, Sandra, Fred? Who's insinuating this? Because in all the time and since January that people have heard this, that not one comment has come across ever. So they go on now to February. And they start pulling out excerpts from this other post that we did. And they highlight that Calvin says, I asked that we step back and reevaluate at least 4 times in closed session and before the public. That she wanted an opportunity to allow the position to stay here another 3 months. What Councilwoman Calvin says in February is the same thing that she had said publicly in October. And I want you guys, you're going to hear that. You're going to hear that entire clip or a portion of that clip where she mentions both of these things. She can say both of these things publicly at a meeting. So I don't know why you're cutting and pasting from a podcast like this was a secret. Ben said the exact same thing at the same meeting. And any mention of Koff's and Associates contract is not confidential information. Remember, Councilman Reynoso began advocating for a new recruitment process, believing that Frank Rojas had undermined Harry Black. And he also believed that the police department subverted Black's candidacy after receiving information through Councilman Sanchez or Figueroa. So now I want you to hear what Councilwoman says let's see, October, November, December, January, February, 4 months prior to this. Now you want to bold and highlight something? Why don't you guys just watch and listen for yourselves?
There's a moment.
Good evening, everyone. As my colleagues have already stated, this has been one of the absolute most challenging decisions that we have had to deal with, and I'm talking about the entire process. And what is not being mentioned here tonight is that we didn't just have 2 candidates, we had 3. And there was one who had not been fired from nowhere in his entire career. But that candidate is not before you because there was something that happened to threaten his employment where he works. And that should not have happened. But that was a candidate who had not been fired, nor was his resume smeared, nor did he have letters from mayors that he had worked for that had stated different reasons for firing with cause. And that is what I am most disappointed about tonight. Because of that process, that there were those who decided to take that decision into their own hands and do something to make sure that that candidate could not come here. It was not the candidate's choice until his livelihood was threatened. So with that being said, I, as a business owner, and have been since I was 21 years old, it is very critical that we look to who we are hiring with the utmost highest expectations that we can possibly find. It was stated that that person may not have been too good for us. I don't understand that type of language. There's no one that is too good for San Bernardino. Nothing is too good for San Bernardino. We must continue to go and seek the best candidate for this position. And that is why it is my motion that we go back out and we look for the best candidate that San Bernardino can find. If we cannot do that at this particular time, City Manager McNeely has 30 hours per week, which takes us for 3 more months to be able to get us in a better position. It's not a lot of time, no, it is not. But then we do have other solutions. There is an organization for which City Manager McNeely sat on that governing board, and it is where all of the retired city managers go, and you are able to choose one as a city and allow them to come in interim for you. We can do this as long as it takes.
Okay. So again, nothing, we're not looking at new information. And Mike, yeah, this is hard to follow because the truth versus this lie and having to go back and forth to show you guys, yeah, and I want you to be able to watch this multiple times because it is hard, it's hard for me to believe. It's hard for me to believe. So they go on and they talk about what else Councilwoman says in the February podcast, and they start bringing Charles Montoya into this, saying that Calvin is insinuating that Charles Montoya is a thief because she said, would you hire someone for your finances if they went into bankruptcy? Now remember, Montoya was fired for cause from the city of Avondale, and they published a letter saying that it was fiscal mismanagement, him taking money that wouldn't belong to him. And so this information that's below was sent to me directly from an Arizona watchdog group that says in 2005, Charles Montoya was fired as finance director of Jefferson County after review of spending found broad fiscal mismanagement and retribution for those who challenged him. In 2015, Montoya was fired as a Florence town manager after he was named as a defendant in an abuse of power lawsuit, but also accused of mismanaging the budget. Montoya was forced a Jefferson County auditor out of a job after she raised red flags about his spending abuses. Montoya was named a defendant in a lawsuit filed by 2 former police detectives who were fired after it's alleged Montoya actively impeded the investigation. In 2018, former Watsonville Mayor, Karina Cervantes Leo went after Montoya for being chronically out of the office. Look, this is other people's works on Montoya, so I don't know, and what it is you're not allowed to speak to their records. You're not allowed to speak to what has actually happened, is what they're trying to tell the residents of San Bernardino. So they go on and talk about things that I said about Montoya, which has nothing to do with anything. Along with, again, my comments about there being a number one candidate that was sabotaged. And so this is, besides Councilwoman Calvin, as I said, Councilman Reynoso has been open about what's happened. And so I want you to hear one of the sources where I was able to obtain my information about this recruitment.
As long as it takes until we, San Bernardino, get ourselves in position.
Oh, there was a little bit more.
You said headhunters? Is it?
Yeah, so it's like a firm that goes and they look up directors or people who are applying for director positions.
Gotcha.
And city manager in this case, people who are looking or open to, and he'll handle basically the entire listing, like from putting it out on all the different websites, Indeed, city manager application website.
Wow.
He'll handle all that. He vets them himself, and then call them a headhunter more commonly because they're responsible for like getting the right heads, like this, like department heads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's a third party?
Yeah.
Wow.
We paid $25,000 for the whole search, which is pretty cheap.
Not
Compared
bad.
to like a lot of other stuff, yeah, for sure. And we were entitled to a free round because it didn't bear fruit. I was looking forward to that.
Oh, but that's been closed, right?
That's how they hired the third choice. He was our third choice, the guy we have now.
Gotcha.
The first guy can't name him legally, but
Yeah.
he some real confidential stuff this whole process because two of them were acting city managers. The guy we hired, he had been on leave for he had been fired since like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But the two guys that were in, they were acting city managers, so they didn't want the word to go out that I'm interviewing in San Bernardino because what's my council gonna think when I go back? They got clipped, and one of them did get clipped.
And they found out
Yeah, they found out.
through the grapevine.
But the first guy we had was incredible, and we had the votes to get him and everything. And this was a Friday. We had an interview with him, and Saturday we got an email that he withdrew because somebody from his police department came into his office. One of his friends, came into his office and was like, I heard you're interviewing in San Bernardino, man. And he was just like, so just straight damage control. Like he went into straight damage control mode. He was like, basically like,
I gotta
don't
cut that
call
off.
me. Like,
Yeah.
like, don't call me, nothing. Like
Oh,
he had some pretty high demands. That's why we were even like in the process of, instead of approving him right then on that Friday, we wanted to give it the weekend, like let him know what our negotiating terms were.
yeah.
Lost him.
Gotcha.
And the second place guy came in, and I wasn't gonna go for that either. But that got really ugly. Information got leaked. He ended up losing his job.
Damn.
Yeah, so it was definitely like
Nasty.
ultimately the council responsible here for it. Yeah.
That's nasty. So it's definitely someone, what do they call it? Like insider trade to the first guy.
Yeah. Somebody here, someone on our council
Definitely.
went to our police department.
Definitely.
There's not a lot of people who got that relationship with police.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Actually have an investigation going on. And,
To about that?
figure out like where these leaks came from.
Got you.
Yeah.
What,
So they're straight from, and this will be a new video we'll get to, but straight from Councilman Reynoso. I mean, literally outlines the entire thing that they're investigating. He has come out, and this was his podcast from December 6th. So everything that they want to highlight, everything that they want to come after Councilwoman Calvin for saying, Ben Reynoso just had laid out months before, literally 7 days after Kerrigan had filed his claim. But do you see the lie? Like his statements contradict everything that they said in the beginning of this. That's a big problem. It's crazy. It's crazy, San Bernardino. Then they say that the next several minutes were spent bashing, this neutral investigator, bashing Charles Montoya and Mayor Tran. Kim Calvin said that Tran is not a unifier and should be held accountable by the community. Well, where's the lie? And I mean, now that we see this, she literally came out and read an entire false statement on August 28th and lied to our community about what was happening. And then Councilwoman Calvin said she claimed that she has become the target and the one they're willing to get rid of at any expense. Well, God, if that isn't the truth, like, we're literally watching it happen. We watched this council, and we're gonna get to this, put out a report about her right before the filings opened for city council elections. And now this, a completely fabricated investigation summary that they've had to change and alter to fit their needs. They go on to talk, which has absolutely nothing to do with Kerrigan's claim, but talk about how Councilwoman Calvin was talking about the downtown. And she says, I'm drained from talking about this for the last 3 years. I'm very drained. It was very frustrating when you continue to speak out on items that are not going the correct way. It's very difficult when you speak out on items, even in closed session, and your colleagues fail to listen to you. It's become clear to me that the plan I thought we voted for or voted on was never going to happen because I'm not a part of the club. She continued speaking about the topic for the next several minutes and said the city staff lied to her and that the staff member was out in the community telling lies about the downtown. So when you're lied to by staff, when you're lied to here, I'm trusting the information, the staff and needing to trust the information is brought to me, and that doesn't happen, what else am I supposed to think and believe? She continued by calling the project insanity and repeating claims that staff lied about the project and that she was receiving emails from many other community members. You mean the lies that Nathan Freeman was telling the community that we just got sued by SBDC over the downtown? So you didn't know this claim was coming out, that they filed a lawsuit when you wrote this. You didn't know that? You were in such a rush that what Councilwoman Calvin is speaking to directly happened a month and a half later. We got sued over the lies that Nathan Freeman was saying. Oh, you mean these emails from community? She continued calling the project insanity, repeating claims that staff lied about the project, and she was receiving emails. These emails, right? These emails right here that are public records that were sent to me by the people who wrote them, those ones. Calvin ended the discussion on the topic by accusing a council colleague of telling her to dance around the topic when she was asked how they were going to tell the community about the downtown plan falling apart. She said she was not going to skirt around the topic and was going to tell them the truth. What a horrible person to want to tell us the truth. They go on to talk about how we wrapped up. And now what they want to be able to do, because now they know that they've lied. They know that they've lied. And there's no way to really connect me to this. So you'll hear it for yourself. But they want to highlight that when I talk about getting the Sun's endorsement, I say, according to them, and being the source for the new newspapers some of the times. Because you can't tie me to anything that actually happened. So you want to act like even if you can't get me for anything now, I must be a leak to the newspapers. Except that the actual thing I said was, and being a source for the newspaper some of the times that pulls out public records, which is completely consistent with what I said August 30th of why I didn't come out early, because I couldn't confirm things. And for those of you that have been following with me, if I don't have a record, I don't speak to it. So I'm gonna let you hear what I say versus what they put out. And you're going to then hear directly what Kimberly Calvin says about her endorsement. We'll just play it all at once. These will be the last portions of the video.
With 7 candidate treasurer. The The Sun called you a truth teller for telling it like it is. What type of impact has their endorsement and other endorsement had on your campaign?
It's been wonderful. I love that, the Sun has always endorsed me. I was when I ran for the 3rd ward, I was the right candidate then, to again call out the evils in City Hall. And when I ran for mayor, I was the most well-equipped, thought that the truth was going to help better collaborate amongst the council. And I was given the nickname then, a couple of years ago, as being the watchdog of City Hall, being someone that is continually out here, looking out for to protect the interests of the community. And that evolution to being now known as the truth teller is, it's a validation that I didn't even know I was looking for in a way, because there is a lot of negativity that comes in being the truth teller. There is a very strong sense in this community of shooting the messenger, and now being known as, when you, especially the Sun in our own conversations, as being the source for the newspaper some of the times, that pulls out the public records. And I think my community has responded extremely well to that, in knowing that they have someone they can trust. They know that someone is going to tell it like it is, regardless if you like it or not, because we can work with the truth. We can't keep working in a lie.
Councilmember Ken, the Sun stated that your voice on the council is badly needed to keep the city moving in the right direction. What type of impact has their endorsement and other endorsement have your?
Well, if I can be what I try to always be, and that's transparent. I wasn't going to apply for the Sun's endorsement. And and that was because, Philip was a little hurt. I was a little peed off. Because of that report that had been put. And I did not get the opportunity to respond prior to going to press. I did get a call, about 30 minutes after they went on the wire. But that was too late. And so I did not appreciate that, not one bit. And so it took me some time, and then with their persistence, I decided to go ahead. The Sun did endorse me in the last campaign. I was very grateful, new to politics, so I thought that was quite impressive. But if I must say, the greatest of endorsers are going to always be the community. The community is who I look for when I'm at a door, or we're making a phone call and they say, keep going. We appreciate you. The work that you've been able to do since 2020 is admirable. We have yet to have a voice that loud in quite some time. We appreciate it. That really, at the end of the day, is all that I need. And it keeps me going even when I don't want to go. So, but with the Sun, that was amazing. Simply because I didn't know which way they were gonna go. I didn't know what they were gonna do. But when they did, I found it to be refreshing, validating, as Dr. Ortiz mentioned. But then when they went on down the line and they said they're endorsing Christian Chauncey, Dr. Ortiz, and I knew that the Sun got it. And the people of San Bernardino needed to see that the Sun got it.
I'd like to start off the meeting with.
All right. So those were our statements. So you heard what I said. And you heard what Councilwoman Calvin said. And what they took out of everything she said was, when it's Calvin's turn to provide a closing statement, she started off by stating that she was originally didn't want to apply for the Sun's endorsement because she was peed off that the report we mentioned had come out and she didn't have an opportunity to respond to it before it went to press. I did get a call about 30 minutes after they went to the wire, but I did not appreciate that one bit. She continued to say they pursued her and she reconsidered putting in for the endorsement. They're missing a lot. And I want to make sure that we hear what the Sun said about Councilwoman Calvin, that Kimberly Calvin's voice on the council is badly needed to keep the city moving in the right direction. However, there is one unavoidable stumbling block that we hope her and her supporters can overcome, is that people were supposed to write her in. Her voice has always been badly needed. Because if you do not have Councilwoman Calvin's voice, these are the type of reports that you get. The city published that as part of the investigation, they put out a public records request for emails between August and September of 2023. Emails that were tagged as attorney-client privilege came out as 277, non-responsive were 3,033. 15 emails which were responsive were 15, so a total of 3,325 emails were searched. This investigator reviewed all of the emails and none were found to contain information which would assist in the investigation. Not one single email, one document ties Councilwoman Calvin to any of this. I and Ricky Van Johnson have said on the record with the investigator that we were not given any closed session information from Councilwoman Calvin. I want you guys to understand that. We voluntarily spoke when reached out by the city investigator, said, hey, you guys seem to know a lot of information. You want to talk? And really the information was left out, but they purposely withheld from the community. Because when everybody else said no, we haven't, we don't know anything, the city left them alone. When we said it, they conjured an entire report to make it look like Councilwoman Calvin was guilty. The findings, after everything that we've just gone through, at the conclusion of the investigation, the preponderance of credible evidence strongly indicates that Councilmember Calvin actively participating in releasing closed session information related to the hiring of Harry Black, Steve Kerrigan, and Charles Montoya. Calvin directly shared information with surrogates who subsequently initiated a campaign through both printed and social media to undermine the candidacies of Steve Kerrigan and later Charles Montoya. Although, regardless of the fact that that Harry Black said that he had been sabotaged and leaked, and Councilwoman Calvin and Alexander could confirm that, and they asked for an investigation that the council never did, all in the same meeting that Steve Kerrigan supposedly became the new city manager, and then immediately, although the Sentinel was already contacting the city a week prior, magically that falls back to Councilwoman Calvin, and the city held a special meeting on October 11th, announced Montoya as the city manager October 13th. And you guys, there is not one public comment on Facebook or in the newspapers, anywhere that I can find Montoya's name before the city announced him. And you also want to know why we know this is an absolute lie? Because if the city had any documentation to counter that, they would have put it in there. But they don't, because that's a lie. And Montoya's record speaks for itself. These same organizers then mobilized a group of citizens during the council meeting's public comment period, making derogatory remarks about the candidates, the process, and expressing desire to retain the city manager or initiate another search. The council been saying that the whole time. The expeditious and accurate dissemination of this information was traced back to council member Kimberly Calvin through investigative interviews and her comments in public forums afterwards. That is absolutely false, because everything shows you that the city published a false timeline of events that completely ignores all of the facts and their own public records. That they publish false narratives and quotes attacking the African American community, Kimberly Calvin, Ricky Van Johnson, and myself. They've made up quotes. They have given opinions and not facts. They have absolutely no evidence in this evidentiary investigation finding report that supports any claims that they're making. And this investigation report contradicts Steve Kerrigan's claims about race and the timeline. And this is just half of what they released. And this was supposed to be the most damning information, right? This was supposed to be what was going to clinch it. Out of the 136 pages, this 18 was supposed to be everything. San Bernardino, look, we're going to keep moving forward on this. I'm going to come out with a part 2 next week. I want you to take time to be able to rewatch this, understand what's happening in our community, because any one of you could be next. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the people who perpetrated this, the people who lied, defamed me and others will never be allowed to do that, because the public record speaks for itself. So thank you, San Bernardino, so much. I appreciate all of you. I see all your comments, Paula and Sarah and Kathy, Mike, Tim, Fran, everybody. If you please let me know if you have any more that you want to talk about, but we will definitely, I'll definitely get back with you guys, and I appreciate all of you. So have a really good rest of your night. Thank you.